They teased her worn backpack, until the instructor's hands trembled when he noticed the blood seal. Clara James walked slowly through the massive gates of the Interstellar Academy. Her backpack, old and worn, hung heavily on her shoulders, patched in several places. The fabric had faded, the straps frayed, and a faint stain ran across the corner that no amount of washing could remove. Other students passing by gave her quick, curious glances, some whispering and giggling. They were all wearing brand-new shiny gear, and their backpacks looked as if they had been polished to perfection. Clara didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She had learned long ago that words often revealed less than silence. The academy grounds were enormous. Towering buildings of glass and metal reflected the twin suns overhead. Hover carts zipped by with students carrying data tablets, small drones, and experimental tools. The air smelled faintly of ozone and cleaning fluids. Clara kept her head down as she moved toward the orientation hall, each step deliberate. She had been preparing for this moment her whole life, even if no one here knew it. As she walked, a group of students lounging by a fountain began to whisper loudly. "Look at that backpack," one said, pointing. "It looks like it came from a museum." "Who brings old gear here?" another asked. "She doesn't even fit in." A few others snickered, echoing their mockery. Clara felt a small prick of irritation but didn't respond. She had learned that teasing often reflected more about the person doing it than the person being teased. Instead, she focused on the small, reddish mark on the corner of her backpack. It was a seal of some kind, almost forgotten, but she had been told it carried the weight of her family's legacy. Captain Grant, the head instructor of the academy, stood at the entrance of the orientation hall, reviewing a data pad. His eyes were sharp, gray, and unyielding, though a flicker of curiosity appeared as they passed over Clara. Something about her presence made his fingers twitch slightly against the pad. He didn't know why yet, but he would. Clara entered the hall and joined the line of new students. Everyone around her seemed confident, chatting excitedly about past achievements, previous missions, or the advanced equipment they had brought. Clara remained silent, observing. She could feel the tension of the room, the nervous excitement, the curiosity, and the subtle competitiveness that hung in the air like static. The academy's director, an elderly human with a calm but commanding voice, welcomed the students. "This is not just a school," he said. "This is a place where humans and our allies learn to explore, to understand, and to lead. You are here because you have potential, and potential is not measured by the shine of your tools, but by the depth of your mind and the courage of your spirit." Some of the students rolled their eyes, thinking the speech was old-fashioned. Clara, however, listened carefully, noting every word. She already knew that courage and skill were not things one could borrow from technology. They were qualities that had to be grown, nurtured, and tested. The orientation moved on to introductions. Each student spoke their name, their origin, and a little about their background. Clara waited patiently, her turn approaching. When it came, she spoke softly but clearly, her voice steady. "Clara James," she said, "from New Houston, Earth. I'm here to learn and to contribute." A ripple of whispers passed through the group, not because of her voice, but because of her worn appearance. One boy, tall with bright blonde hair, smirked. "You really think you belong here with that backpack?" he asked, loud enough for several nearby students to hear. Clara looked at him calmly. "This backpack has carried more than any shiny gear you have," she replied. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. The boy laughed, though there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He hadn't expected her to answer at all. Captain Grant's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched the exchange. There was something in Clara's posture, in the way she held herself, that reminded him of stories he had heard as a young cadet. Stories of humans whose resourcefulness and intelligence surpassed even the most advanced technology of their time. Something about that small, faded backpack made him uneasy. After introductions, the students were guided to their quarters. Clara's room was modest, a small space with a bed, desk, and a storage unit. She carefully placed her backpack on the desk and unfastened the straps, examining the contents. Inside, it was organized in a way that seemed impossible for its size. There were tools that could transform and adapt to different situations, star charts with markings no one else had seen, and a small, sealed container with a faint red glow. That was the blood seal. The blood seal was a family heirloom, passed down through generations. Legends said it was connected to a group of humans who had preserved knowledge and strategies from the earliest days of human space exploration. Most people thought the stories were myths. Clara knew better. She had been trained since childhood to protect it and to understand its purpose. While Clara was arranging her belongings, a fellow student entered, Liam, a bright-eyed boy with a friendly smile. "Hey, I didn't mean to laugh at your backpack earlier," he said. "I guess it's different," Clara smiled faintly. "It's all right, people usually underestimate what they can't immediately understand." Liam nodded, looking around the small room. "I've never seen tools like that. Are they real?" "They are," Clara replied. "And they do more than they seem." As they talked, Captain Grant observed from the hallway, noting Clara's calm demeanor and the unusual glow of the blood seal. He felt a shiver run through him, though he couldn't explain why. Something about this student was different. Not better, not worse, just extraordinary. The next day, the students were introduced to the Academy's first practical exercise, a navigation and survival simulation on a remote planet. The students were divided into teams, each given basic equipment, and told to find a series of checkpoints while avoiding simulated hazards. The group that included Clara laughed again at her worn backpack. "Good luck carrying all that ancient junk across the planet," one said. Clara didn't respond. Instead, she checked her maps and tools quietly, noting the layout of the terrain, the weather patterns, and the optimal path to each checkpoint. As the exercise began, Clara moved with steady precision. Her backpack, though old and battered, adapted in subtle ways. Compartments shifted to provide the right tools at the right moment. Small sensors extended to detect environmental hazards, and her star charts updated in real time. Other students struggled with their advanced gear, which occasionally malfunctioned under the planet's unpredictable conditions. By the first checkpoint, Clara was already far ahead of the others. She paused only briefly to observe her surroundings, noting every detail. She discovered a small stream that could provide water, unusual rock formations that could offer shelter, and even signs of the planet's hidden wildlife. Other students began to notice her efficiency, their earlier laughter turning to quiet frustration. Captain Grant, monitoring the exercise from orbit, leaned back in his chair. He had seen many students excel before, but there was something different about Clara. He remembered the legends of the blood seal and realized that the small mark on her backpack matched the description perfectly. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the data pad, reviewing old records. If it truly was the blood seal, then Clara was not just another student. She was the heir of a hidden human legacy, one that could reshape the Academy's understanding of human potential. Back on the planet, Clara reached the second checkpoint. She helped a student who had fallen behind, showing them how to navigate tricky terrain without complaining. Her quiet leadership began to draw attention. Some of the students who had mocked her earlier were starting to respect her, though they would never admit it openly. As the sun set over the alien horizon, the teams returned to the Academy. Clara's group was the first to finish, not because she had pushed them, but because she had guided them subtly, teaching through example. The instructor overseeing the exercise, a strict officer named Lieutenant Vance, raised an eyebrow at her performance. "Remarkable," he muttered. "Most would have struggled with half the obstacles she solved effortlessly." That evening, Clara sat quietly in her room, examining the blood seal. She knew that her time at the Academy would be filled with challenges, both expected and unexpected. She also knew that she would need to be patient. The students would continue to tease, doubt, and underestimate her, but she was ready. Her family's legacy was not about appearances. It was about intelligence, perseverance, and vision. Captain Grant, meanwhile, reviewed the records of the blood seal late into the night. He could feel the weight of what it meant. Humanity had hidden its greatest secrets in plain sight, and now, finally, someone had arrived to carry them forward. He could not yet understand the full potential of Clara James, but he knew one thing. The Academy had just encountered a student unlike any other. The next morning, the Academy buzzed with excitement. Clara entered the main hall with her usual calm composure. The students still whispered and glanced at her backpack, but now some of the whispers carried curiosity rather than mockery. The instructors exchanged silent looks, realizing that the presence of the blood seal might mean more than they had imagined. Clara knew that her journey was just beginning. She had survived the first test, proved her skill, and kept her secret intact. But the Academy had many more challenges ahead, each designed to test not just the body, but the mind and the spirit. She tightened the straps of her worn backpack, feeling the reassuring weight of the blood seal, and stepped forward. Whatever awaited her, she was ready to meet it, one calculated step at a time. As the sun rose higher over the academy, casting long shadows across the grounds, Clara moved with quiet confidence, aware that every eye in the hall was on her. And though she didn't speak of it, she carried with her the legacy of countless generations, a legacy that was about to remind the galaxy why humans should never be underestimated. The next morning, the academy was alive with energy. Students hustled through the halls, checking data pads, preparing tools, and discussing strategies for the day's exercises. Clara walked calmly through the corridors, her backpack heavy but familiar on her shoulders. The worn fabric and patched seams drew quiet glances from the other students. Some whispered to each other, wondering how she could move so confidently with gear that looked so old. Clara ignored them. She had learned long ago that people often misjudged what they could not understand. Her first class was a field exercise in exploration and survival, designed to test both physical and mental skill. The students were assigned to teams, each sent to a remote simulation zone filled with complex terrain, unpredictable weather, and hidden challenges. Clara was placed with two other students, Liam, who had shown curiosity and quiet respect the previous day, and Zara, a sharp, competitive girl with a reputation for quick thinking and fast action. As they prepared to leave the academy's main grounds, Clara opened her backpack and began checking her tools. The compartments shifted easily, revealing devices that could measure air quality, detect hidden water sources, and even project temporary shelter structures. The worn exterior of the pack hid its advanced contents perfectly. Liam looked over, impressed. "I didn't think an old backpack could hold all this," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. Clara smiled faintly. "It's not the backpack that matters," she said. "It's how you use what's inside." Zara raised an eyebrow. "You mean luck," she said. Clara did not reply. Words were rarely the fastest solution. Instead, she focused on the path ahead, analyzing the terrain and planning the most efficient route. As the teams moved into the simulation zone, the challenges quickly became apparent. Thick undergrowth blocked paths, shallow streams forced detours, and sudden changes in weather tested the students' adaptability. Some teams struggled immediately, their high-tech equipment reacting unpredictably to the environment. Clara's team, however, moved smoothly, guided by her careful observation and calm decision-making. At the first checkpoint, Clara paused to evaluate the surroundings. She noticed subtle signs in the terrain, a pattern of rocks indicating where water flowed underground, a cluster of plants suggesting shelter nearby, and faint markings left by simulated wildlife. She directed Liam and Zara to adjust their course slightly, and within minutes, they reached the checkpoint faster than any other team. Some students who had previously mocked her backpack were watching from a distance. Their surprise was evident as Clara and her teammates appeared efficiently prepared, while others struggled to recover from minor mistakes. A few of them began muttering under their breath. "How is she doing this with that old thing?" one said. "She's cheating somehow," another added, though no one could explain how. Clara ignored the stares and focused on the next part of the exercise, a navigation challenge through dense forest. The simulation required them to find 3 hidden markers using only basic maps and environmental cues. Her backpack provided small, subtle advantages: a foldable sensor that could detect subtle magnetic variations, a compact multi-tool for creating markers, and even a small data recorder to log observations. None of these were obvious to the casual observer, but they made her work smoother and faster. As they navigated, Clara noticed that Liam struggled slightly with the direction. She gently guided him without making him feel inadequate. "Try to notice the way the trees lean," she suggested. "It tells you where the wind usually blows, which can lead us toward the next marker." Liam nodded, following her advice carefully. Zara, who often worked alone, seemed frustrated at first. But as she observed Clara's calm efficiency, she began to see the value of teamwork. Without needing to speak much, Clara's example taught her how to act with patience and observation rather than rushing and relying solely on instinct. By the second checkpoint, Clara's team was far ahead. They paused briefly for a small snack and to refill water. Clara carefully checked her backpack and tools, ensuring everything was ready for the next stage. Liam watched her, curiosity growing. "You know a lot about these tools," he said. "Were you trained somewhere special?" Clara smiled faintly. "My family has always taught me to be prepared. That's all you need, knowledge and practice. The rest comes with observation and patience." Meanwhile, other teams began to notice the difference between Clara's methods and their own. They realized that their advanced gadgets were not helping as much as they had expected. Some tools malfunctioned in the unpredictable terrain, others required constant adjustment. Clara's simple, adaptive approach, aided by her unusual backpack, allowed her to move efficiently without error. Captain Grant, watching the exercise from a monitoring station, began to grow more uneasy. He studied the small red seal on Clara's backpack, the blood seal, recognizing it from the Academy's old archives. Few had ever seen it, and even fewer understood its significance. The stories claimed that it belonged to a human lineage known for extraordinary intelligence, strategy, and leadership. If the stories were true, Clara was not just a talented student. She was carrying a legacy that could change how humans were regarded in the galaxy. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the pad to compare records. Back in the simulation, Clara's team approached the final checkpoint. A small, steep ravine blocked the path. Other teams had taken long detours, struggling with ropes and equipment. Clara examined the terrain carefully, noticing a set of natural footholds that could be used to descend safely. She pointed them out to Liam and Zara, demonstrating the safest method. Her calm guidance allowed her team to cross the ravine quickly and efficiently, leaving others behind. When they reached the final marker, the simulation supervisor checked their progress. Clara's team had completed all tasks not only fastest, but also with the most accurate observations recorded. The other students looked on in disbelief. Some who had mocked her backpack now felt a mix of confusion and awe. During the return to the academy, Clara noticed a small group of students whispering among themselves. Their tone had changed. It was no longer teasing. "Did you see how fast she finished?" one said. "And she barely used her tools," another added. "I think she actually understands the planet better than anyone else." Clara said nothing. She had no need to respond. Her work spoke louder than words. That evening, Clara returned to her quarters, placing her backpack carefully on the desk. She opened it and examined the blood seal once more. The small red glow seemed to pulse faintly, as if acknowledging her success. She thought about the challenges ahead. The Academy would continue to test her in both obvious and subtle ways. But she was ready. She had learned to rely on observation, patience, and intelligence, all qualities that could not be replaced by flashy technology or social approval. Liam knocked lightly on her door. "Can I come in?" he asked. Clara nodded and he stepped inside. "You were amazing today," he said, eyes wide. "I don't think anyone here knows how you do it." Clara smiled faintly. "It's not about being amazing, it's about seeing what others miss and thinking ahead." "I wish I could do that," he said. "I always feel like I'm just guessing half the time." "You can," Clara said quietly. "You just have to slow down and notice things. The world gives you clues if you take the time to see them." As Liam left, Clara reflected on her journey. The teasing, the whispers, and the laughter of others no longer mattered. What mattered was the knowledge she carried, the skills she had developed, and the legacy she represented. Her worn backpack, once a symbol of ridicule, had become a quiet testament to preparation and wisdom. Captain Grant spent the night reviewing records and data about the blood seal. His unease grew with every passing hour. The old stories suggested that humans with the seal had once been capable of extraordinary feats, achieving things that were considered impossible even by advanced interstellar standards. If Clara was truly connected to that lineage, then the Academy had just witnessed the arrival of a student who could surpass expectations in ways no one had yet imagined. The next morning, the Academy buzzed with rumors about Clara's performance. Students who had doubted her were now curious. Some approached her cautiously, others tried to compete with her. Clara remained calm, quietly observing the changing dynamics. She knew that respect earned through action was far stronger than respect demanded through words or appearances. The exercises that followed tested leadership, problem-solving, and collaboration. Clara continued to excel, guiding her team with subtlety and intelligence. She never sought praise, yet the results of her actions drew attention naturally. By the end of the week, even the students who had teased her at the start could not deny her skill. Captain Grant called Clara to his office. He gestured for her to sit and studied her carefully. "Your performance this week has been remarkable," he said, "but there is something about your backpack and the seal on it." Clara nodded. "It is my family's legacy," she said simply. "I have been entrusted with its protection and use. It teaches more than it hides if one knows how to observe." Grant leaned back, thoughtful. "I think the Academy may not yet realize what they have in their midst. That seal, it represents knowledge, strategy, and history long thought lost. You may be carrying more than tools. You may be carrying the key to reminding everyone here why humans should never be underestimated." Clara remained quiet, letting his words settle. She knew the challenges ahead would be greater, but she also knew she was ready. The Academy had begun to see her differently, and that small shift in perception could grow into something far more important over time. As she left the office, Clara glanced at her backpack. The faded fabric, patched corners, and worn straps had once drawn ridicule. Now it carried a quiet power that no one could deny. She adjusted the straps, feeling the weight of both the tools and the legacy within, and walked into the Academy corridors with steady confidence, ready for whatever tests awaited her next. The morning sun cast a pale gold over the Academy as Clara James made her way to the training grounds. The air was filled with the sounds of students preparing for another day of exercises, their voices mingling with the distant hum of hover carts and the soft whir of drones. Clara's backpack rested comfortably on her shoulders, its worn fabric and patched corners drawing occasional glances from those around her. Some whispered quietly, still curious, still unsure what to make of her. Others avoided looking altogether, having begun to realize that there was more to her than appearances suggested. Today was different. Today's exercise was not just about survival or navigation. It was about problem-solving and leadership. The students were told they would be facing a complex scenario in which multiple groups would need to collaborate to achieve a common goal. Each team would encounter challenges that could only be solved through observation, logic, and careful planning. Clara approached the area quietly, her eyes scanning the layout. She noted the placement of obstacles, the flow of foot traffic, and even the subtle differences in terrain that might affect strategy. Her team had grown from the previous exercises. Liam and Zara remained by her side, and a few new students were added. 2 older boys from Mars, a girl from Titan, and another boy from the Earth colony of New Sydney. Some were skeptical of Clara's quiet authority. Others, like Liam, were curious and willing to learn. The first moments of the exercise saw students rushing, shouting instructions, and sometimes colliding in their haste. Clara, by contrast, remained calm, observing, analyzing, and planning. The scenario unfolded in a simulated alien environment. Strange rock formations, uneven ground, and sudden, mild weather changes created a realistic challenge. Small sensor drones buzzed overhead, tracking movements and logging every action for evaluation later. Each team needed to locate 3 hidden nodes scattered across the area and transmit correct data from each. The nodes were designed to require teamwork and careful thinking rather than brute force. Clara's worn backpack, once mocked for its old appearance, now became a quiet partner. Small compartments opened as needed, tools emerged, and sensors extended to provide real-time environmental feedback. She moved deliberately toward the first node, her team following closely. Liam stumbled slightly over a hidden route, and Clara extended a small collapsible bridge from her pack to stabilize his path. Zara watched, her competitive nature challenged by Clara's calm efficiency. "Why don't we just rush like everyone else?" Zara asked quietly. "Because rushing misses things," Clara replied simply. "We need to see the details and plan ahead. It's faster in the long run." As they approached the first node, Clara noticed subtle signs around it. Tiny depressions in the soil indicating recent activity, faint reflective markers, and small irregularities in the air flow. She guided her team to position themselves carefully, analyzing the surroundings before attempting to retrieve the node data. The process was slow but deliberate, and when they transmitted the correct readings, the system confirmed their success. Other teams had rushed in blindly, triggered false sensors, and were forced to start over. Captain Grant, observing from the command tower, felt a sense of awe mixed with tension. He studied the small red seal on Clara's backpack, the blood seal, recognizing it instantly. Few people in the academy had ever seen it, and fewer still understood its significance. It marked a human lineage of intelligence, strategy, and innovation that had been almost forgotten. If Clara truly carried this legacy, then her performance was only the beginning. He leaned forward in his seat, fingers twitching slightly as he tracked her movements. The team moved to the second node, facing more complex challenges. A narrow canyon blocked their path, with only a few stable footholds across a small gap. Most teams had spent minutes trying to set up elaborate ropes or climbing aids, but Clara simply surveyed the canyon, identified the natural stepping points, and led her team across carefully. Liam and the others followed her instructions with precision, impressed by her clarity and foresight. "What's in that backpack of yours?" Liam whispered as they crossed. Clara smiled faintly. "It's not about what's inside. It's about knowing how to use it, and knowing when to rely on what you already see." By the time they reached the third node, Clara's quiet leadership had begun to influence the others. Students who had been skeptical were now watching carefully, copying her techniques, and even asking subtle questions about her methods. Her worn backpack with its glowing blood seal had become a symbol of trust, not mockery. The final node was the most challenging. It required careful coordination, precise measurements, and quick thinking to transmit the correct data. Several teams had already failed multiple attempts, frustrated by the complex system. Clara approached calmly, assessing every detail. She directed her team to spread out strategically, observe patterns, and use subtle tools from her pack. The process required patience, but Clara's careful guidance allowed them to succeed on the first attempt. Other students stared in disbelief. Some whispered explanations about luck or cheating, though no one could see any hidden advantage beyond Clara's skill and judgment. The instructors, however, recognized the pattern immediately. Clara was not relying on luck or advanced technology alone. She was applying logic, foresight, and observation in a way that exceeded expectations. After the exercise, the students gathered for debriefing. Captain Grant stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Clara. "Today's performance has been extraordinary," he said, his voice calm but carrying authority. "You have demonstrated the value of careful observation, teamwork, and thoughtful strategy. Some of you may not yet understand how much was achieved here, but your results speak for themselves." Whispers moved through the students again, this time not mocking but filled with curiosity and respect. Many were beginning to understand that Clara's worn backpack was not a sign of weakness, but a container of wisdom, practice, and subtle ingenuity. As the group dispersed, Liam approached Clara again. "I still don't understand how you do it," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "It's like you can see things nobody else notices." Clara looked at him thoughtfully. "Observation is everything. The world gives you clues if you take the time to see them. Most people rush past because they are too busy trying to impress others." That evening, Clara returned to her room. She carefully examined the blood seal, its faint red glow illuminating the small space. She thought about the day's exercises and how her team had succeeded. The academy was beginning to notice her abilities, though most did not yet understand the depth of her legacy. She knew the blood seal would eventually draw attention from those who truly understood its significance. Captain Grant spent the evening reviewing old records of the blood seal. Every document he found confirmed what he had suspected. This was no ordinary student. Clara James carried a lineage of humans renowned for their intelligence, strategy, and leadership, qualities that had been forgotten by most of the galaxy. If she could harness that legacy, it would not only transform her future, but also influence the way humans were perceived in interstellar relations. His hands trembled slightly as he recorded his observations. The next morning, Clara prepared for another exercise, this one focusing on diplomacy and negotiation. Teams were given a scenario in which they would interact with simulated alien factions, each with different needs, rules, and communication styles. Success depended on observation, adaptability, and thoughtful strategy rather than speed or strength. Clara's backpack once again provided subtle advantages. Communication devices, cultural reference data, and analytic tools, all hidden within the worn fabric. As the exercise began, Clara's team faced challenges immediately. One of the simulated factions seemed aggressive, refusing to respond to standard approaches. Other teams panicked, sending repeated communications that escalated tension. Clara observed carefully. She noticed patterns in the faction's responses and subtle cues in their behavior. Instead of reacting hastily, she guided her team to approach with patience, using indirect communication and small gestures of trust. Slowly, the simulated faction began to respond positively. Clara's careful observation and planning allowed the interaction to succeed where others had failed. Her team transmitted the required data and completed the negotiations smoothly, demonstrating the value of intelligence and foresight over hasty action. By the end of the day, instructors and students alike were beginning to understand a pattern. Clara's success was not a matter of luck or tools. It was her mind, her observation, and her calm, methodical approach that made the difference. The worn backpack and the blood seal were symbols of preparation, legacy, and human ingenuity, not relics of the past. That night, Clara wrote in her journal, documenting her thoughts on the day's exercises. She reflected on the importance of patience, observation, and quiet leadership. She thought about her team, how each member had learned from her example, and how their respect had grown naturally. She also considered the larger legacy she carried, the hidden knowledge of humans long thought ordinary or forgotten. Captain Grant, reviewing reports late into the night, felt a growing sense of anticipation. Clara James was no ordinary student. Her abilities, combined with the blood seal's significance, marked her as someone who could reshape the Academy's understanding of human potential. The subtle power of observation, patience, and intelligence that she displayed could inspire generations to come. He realized that the teasing and whispers from earlier days were a distant memory for the Academy. The presence of Clara and her worn backpack had begun to quietly shift everything. The following morning, Clara entered the Academy halls with her usual calm confidence. Students still glanced at her backpack, some with curiosity, others with admiration. The exercises ahead would be more challenging, but Clara was ready. She had proven that patience, observation, and quiet leadership could achieve more than flashy tools or speed. And as the blood seal glowed faintly against the worn fabric of her backpack, she knew that her journey was only just beginning. Clara stepped forward into the Academy corridors, her mind focused and steady. Whatever challenges awaited her, she would face them with calm determination, careful observation, and the quiet strength that had been part of her legacy for generations. The students and instructors alike were beginning to understand that appearances could be deceiving, and that the human mind, when applied with patience and intelligence, was a force that could not be underestimated. The morning air at the Academy was crisp and full of quiet. Energy. Students moved quickly between buildings, preparing for the next series of exercises. Today was unlike the previous days. It was a simulation designed to test advanced strategy, resourcefulness, and the ability to think under unexpected circumstances. Clara James walked calmly among her peers, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Its worn fabric and frayed straps drew the usual glances and whispers. Some students still questioned her choice of gear, but the mocking tone had largely faded. Even those who had been vocal skeptics were now watching her with curiosity, unsure what to make of her quiet confidence. Her team, a mix of students from various colonies, gathered at the starting point. Liam and Zara were there, alongside two others she had worked with during previous exercises. Clara's presence seemed to settle them. Unlike some students who rushed ahead, she took a moment to scan the environment. Her eyes noticed small details, a subtle change in the soil texture, slight variations in air pressure, and faint, irregular patterns in the foliage that could indicate hidden obstacles. The instructors explained the exercise. Each team would be placed in a simulated alien city. Their goal was to recover a series of data nodes hidden throughout the environment. The simulation included unpredictable events, changing weather, unfamiliar terrain, and uncooperative automated systems designed to challenge the students' planning and adaptability. Success would depend on observation, creativity, and strategic thinking. As the simulation began, Clara's team moved deliberately, scanning the city streets and pathways before taking any steps. Her backpack, once a source of ridicule, revealed subtle advantages. Small sensors extended from hidden compartments to measure environmental changes. Foldable tools emerged quietly, aiding in movement and analysis. The red glow of the blood seal on her pack seemed faint but constant, as if silently affirming her skill. Other teams rushed forward recklessly. Some ignored subtle cues, setting off automated warnings. Others struggled with overly complicated tools, wasting precious time. Clara's team moved efficiently, using observation and strategy to avoid traps and reach the first data node quickly. Liam followed her lead, impressed by how she anticipated obstacles and adjusted their path with minimal effort. Zara, ever competitive, watched carefully. She could see the difference between Clara's calm approach and the hurried attempts of the others. "How do you always know what to do?" she asked quietly as they approached a narrow alley. Clara smiled faintly. "I watch and think. I don't act until I understand the situation." By the second node, challenges increased. Automated drones patrolled the area, scanning for movement. Other teams attempted to move past them quickly but triggered alarms. Clara observed patterns in the drone's movement and guided her team to pass unnoticed. Liam and the others followed, amazed at her calm authority. Even Zara, who preferred taking charge, began to recognize the value of Clara's methods. Captain Grant monitored the exercise from his observation deck. He had reviewed the history of the blood seal multiple times, but now, watching Clara in action, he realized the full scope of its significance. The students around her could see only what was in plain sight: a worn backpack, a calm student, and subtle tools. Captain Grant, however, understood the legacy it represented. Generations of human knowledge, strategy, and innovation encoded in both the seal and Clara's training. His hands trembled slightly as he observed her movements. The team reached the third node, a complex puzzle that required both critical thinking and resourcefulness. Many students had failed at previous attempts, overcomplicating solutions or ignoring subtle cues. Clara analyzed the problem carefully, noticing hidden patterns in the data interfaces and the surrounding environment. She guided her team step by step, suggesting small adjustments and testing outcomes cautiously. By the time they transmitted the correct data, other teams had struggled multiple times and grown frustrated. Clara's group had completed the task quietly, efficiently, and without error. Some students began to murmur, their earlier doubt now replaced by curiosity and quiet admiration. "I can't believe she did that so easily," one whispered. "Her backpack, there's something in it that makes her different." After the exercise, the instructors gathered the students for a review session. Captain Grant stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Clara. "Today's performance has been remarkable," he said. "It demonstrates the power of observation, patience, and careful planning. What you do not see immediately can be just as important as what you see. Clara James has reminded us all that intelligence and strategy are invaluable tools." Some students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing they had underestimated her. Others, like Liam, nodded quietly in agreement. He had begun to understand that success did not always come from speed or flashy tools, but from thoughtfulness, planning, and a deep understanding of the environment. Clara returned to her room later that day, carefully placing her backpack on the desk. The blood seal glowed faintly, almost as if acknowledging her success. She thought about the day's events and how her quiet guidance had influenced the team. Respect for her abilities was growing, though few yet understood the full scope of her legacy. She knew that eventually, the blood seal would draw attention from those who could recognize its true significance. As she worked, Captain Grant contacted the Academy's archives. He requested access to all historical records regarding the blood seal and its associated lineage. As he reviewed the documents, he realized that Clara's abilities were only a small part of what the seal represented. Humans connected to it had historically been capable of extraordinary achievements, outsmarting alien opponents, leading negotiations, and designing systems that integrated logic, strategy, and subtle adaptability. The thought that Clara could be the next in this line filled him with both awe and concern. The following day, a new challenge awaited. Students were transported to a simulation that required negotiation and diplomacy with a series of alien factions. The exercise was designed to test communication, reasoning, and problem-solving under pressure. Clara observed carefully as her team approached the first faction. Unlike other teams, which relied on preset phrases and standard procedures, Clara encouraged her team to pay attention to subtle cues: tone of voice, body movement, and environmental context. The first negotiation began awkwardly. Other teams struggled as the simulated aliens responded unpredictably to standard commands. Clara, however, guided her team to adapt gradually, responding with small gestures of trust and patience. Slowly, the simulated aliens began to cooperate, responding to her calm approach. Liam followed her instructions, amazed at how a small adjustment could completely change the interaction. By the end of the simulation, Clara's team had successfully completed all negotiations with minimal error. Other students were stunned. Some whispered explanations of luck or advanced tools, but those who observed closely knew the truth. It was her intelligence, patience, and careful observation that had achieved success. Captain Grant met Clara after the exercise. He studied the blood seal closely. "Your performance is remarkable," he said. "But this seal, it represents something far greater than we have realized. Humans who carried it were not only intelligent, they were leaders, innovators, and strategists. You may be carrying more than tools or skills. You may be carrying a legacy." Clara listened quietly. "I know," she said. "I have been trained to understand it, to use it wisely, and to pass on the lessons it contains. The world will see more of its value in time." Grant nodded, still concerned but deeply impressed. "You are already showing us what it means to be human in the best sense. Thoughtful, patient, adaptable. Your legacy is a reminder that appearances are often deceiving, and that true strength lies in intelligence and careful planning." As Clara left the office, she thought about the weeks ahead. More challenges would come, each designed to test different skills: logic, adaptability, collaboration, and creativity. She knew her journey at the academy was far from over. But she also knew that each exercise was an opportunity to demonstrate the quiet power of observation, the value of patience, and the legacy carried within her worn backpack and its glowing blood seal. That evening, Clara recorded her reflections in her journal. She wrote about the importance of noticing small details, thinking ahead, and guiding others quietly without forcing authority. She reflected on her team, how Liam and Zara had begun to trust her methods, and how the other students' perceptions were slowly shifting. She knew that the true test was not the exercises themselves, but the lessons that her peers would carry forward. Captain Grant reviewed reports late into the night. He realized that Clara James was no ordinary student. She was the embodiment of a human legacy that had been almost forgotten, but remained quietly potent. The blood seal on her backpack was a symbol, yes, but it was also a sign that humans were capable of remarkable things when intelligence, patience, and observation were applied. He felt a deep respect and a small, growing worry. Such ability could influence not only the academy but the galaxy itself. The following morning, Clara entered the training halls with calm confidence. Students still glanced at her backpack, some with curiosity, others with admiration. She smiled faintly, aware that she had begun to change perceptions, not through words but through action. The challenges ahead would be more complex, more subtle, and more demanding. Yet Clara was ready. She had her mind, her team, and the legacy of the blood seal to guide her. As the sun rose over the academy, casting long shadows across the corridors and training grounds, Clara stepped forward with quiet determination. Every glance, every whisper, and every curious stare from her peers reminded her that she was no longer just a student with a worn backpack. She was a carrier of knowledge, strategy, and legacy, a human who would remind the galaxy why intelligence, patience, and observation were as powerful as any tool or technology. The blood seal glowed faintly, a quiet promise of things to come as Clara moved toward the next exercise, ready to show the academy, and perhaps the galaxy, the true power of human ingenuity. The academy buzzed with energy early that morning. Clara James moved through the halls with calm purpose, her backpack resting comfortably on her shoulders. The worn fabric, patched corners, and frayed straps drew glances from students and instructors alike. Some looked on with admiration, others with curiosity, and a few with quiet apprehension. By now, nearly everyone had noticed that Clara was not an ordinary student, though few could yet understand the full scope of her abilities or the significance of the blood seal that glowed faintly against the faded fabric of her pack. Today was the final exercise of the training cycle, a comprehensive simulation combining navigation, problem-solving, strategy, and diplomacy. It was designed to test everything the students had learned and push them to apply it under pressure. The instructors had spent weeks preparing it, confident that it would reveal the strengths and weaknesses of each participant. Clara, as always, approached it with quiet focus, scanning the environment and planning her moves carefully. Her team assembled at the starting point. Liam, Zara, and two others from previous exercises were with her, forming a diverse group with different skills and strengths. Clara looked at each of them briefly, noting their strengths and potential challenges. "Remember," she said softly, "observe first, act second. Everything we see gives us clues for what to do next." The simulation began. The environment was a sprawling, simulated alien city, filled with complex structures, uneven terrain, and hidden nodes that the teams were required to locate. Automated systems created unexpected obstacles, shifting walls, energy barriers, and environmental changes designed to test adaptability. Other teams rushed forward recklessly, some faltering when faced with sudden changes, others overwhelmed by the complexity of the simulation. Clara's team moved methodically. Her backpack, once mocked for its worn appearance, now demonstrated subtle but remarkable utility. Compartments shifted to reveal small tools, sensors extended to detect hidden patterns, and the red glow of the blood seal seemed almost to pulse in rhythm with her movements. Every decision Clara made was deliberate, informed by observation and analysis. The first node required careful interpretation of alien data panels. Other teams had struggled with trial-and-error approaches, but Clara's team succeeded quickly and efficiently. She guided them with calm instructions, allowing each member to contribute their skills without feeling pressured or rushed. Liam followed her quietly, increasingly impressed by the clarity of her guidance. Zara, competitive and sharp, began to understand that Clara's success was not magic. It was intelligence, observation, and thoughtful strategy. As they moved to the second node, the challenge intensified. A series of barriers blocked direct paths, and automated drones scanned for movement. Other teams attempted to bypass the drones quickly, triggering alarms and setbacks. Clara paused, observing the patterns in the drones' movement. She identified gaps and subtle timing cues, then guided her team to pass undetected. The process required patience, precise timing, and careful coordination. Liam whispered to her, "I don't know how you see all that." Clara only smiled faintly. "I watch, I wait, and then I move." By the third node, the simulation introduced diplomatic elements. Simulated alien factions appeared, each with different communication styles, priorities, and hidden agendas. Teams were expected to negotiate access to resources while maintaining order and respect. Many students panicked, attempting to rely solely on memorized phrases or advanced translation devices. Clara approached cautiously, studying the subtle signals of the alien representatives, gestures, inflection, and environmental cues. She guided her team to respond with patience, respect, and small acts of trust, allowing the factions to cooperate willingly. The other students and instructors began to take notice. Where many had assumed the blood seal and Clara's worn backpack were mere curiosities, they now recognized them as instruments of observation, preparation, and knowledge. Clara's approach was quiet, subtle, and profoundly effective. By the end of the diplomatic challenge, her team had successfully completed all objectives without error, their performance unmatched by any other group. Captain Grant watched from the observation deck. His fingers trembled slightly as he reviewed the simulation results. Every movement, every decision Clara made, reflected the skills and intelligence of a human lineage long thought lost. The blood seal on her backpack was not just symbolic. It was evidence of knowledge, strategy, and ingenuity passed down through generations. Clara James was not simply a student. She was a living testament to the strength, adaptability, and brilliance of humanity. After the exercise, the Academy gathered for the final debriefing. Instructors and students alike looked at Clara with newfound respect. Captain Grant stepped forward, addressing the group. "Today we have witnessed more than skill or preparation," he said. "We have witnessed insight, patience, and intelligence that exceeds ordinary expectations. Clara James has demonstrated the quiet power of observation, the strength of planning, and the value of knowledge passed through generations. Her backpack, worn and patched, carries a symbol, this blood seal, that represents a lineage of humans who mastered both thought and action. Let us not forget what we have seen here today." The room was silent, the students absorbing the weight of his words. Many who had mocked Clara in the past now understood that they had underestimated her. The blood seal, once unnoticed, had become a symbol of human ingenuity and legacy. Clara remained calm, letting the recognition settle naturally. She had not sought praise, she had only acted according to what she had learned and observed. Later, Clara returned to her quarters. She placed her backpack on the desk and carefully examined the blood seal. Its faint red glow seemed to pulse, as if acknowledging the culmination of her efforts. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the lessons she had learned, and the respect she had earned, not through force, not through words, but through patience, intelligence, and quiet leadership. Liam knocked gently on her door. "Can I come in?" he asked. Clara nodded. "You were amazing today," he said, his voice full of awe. "I don't think anyone expected you to handle everything so perfectly." Clara smiled. "It's not perfection," she said softly. "It's observation, preparation, and understanding what matters most." "I wish I could do that," he said. "I've never seen anyone plan so carefully and still act so calmly." "You can," Clara replied. "You just need to slow down and notice what others miss. The world gives you answers if you look for them." As Liam left, Clara reflected on her journey. She had arrived at the academy carrying a worn backpack and a family legacy few understood. She had been underestimated, mocked, and questioned. Yet through observation, intelligence, and quiet leadership, she had demonstrated the true power of humanity, adaptability, resourcefulness, and insight. Captain Grant spent the evening reviewing the full exercise reports. He realized that Clara James had done more than complete the challenges. She had reminded the Academy of what humans could achieve when intelligence and observation were applied. The blood seal on her backpack was a symbol of this legacy, a quiet but powerful reminder that appearances often deceived and that true strength lay in thought, preparation, and perseverance. The next morning, Clara walked through the academy halls with calm confidence. Students who had once whispered and mocked now looked on with respect and curiosity. Many sought to learn from her example, quietly observing how she approached challenges, how she interacted with her team, and how she carried herself with poise and intelligence. The final ceremony of the training cycle recognized the highest achievements. Clara's team received commendations for their performance in navigation, problem-solving, and diplomacy. The instructors, including Captain Grant, spoke of their admiration for her skill, leadership, and quiet intelligence. The blood seal, once a small and unnoticed emblem on a worn backpack, had become a symbol of excellence and human legacy. As the ceremony concluded, Clara stood quietly watching her peers. She saw their growth, their curiosity, and the beginnings of respect that had been earned not through words or displays of force, but through intelligence, patience, and careful observation. She felt a quiet satisfaction. Her journey was far from over, but she had proven a point. Humanity's strength was not always loud or obvious, but it was enduring, adaptable, and extraordinary. Captain Grant approached her as the students began to leave. "Clara," he said, his voice steady but filled with respect, "you have reminded us all of what it means to be human, not in what we say or show, but in what we think, observe, and accomplish. You carry more than tools and knowledge, you carry a legacy. And the Academy, perhaps the galaxy, will never forget it." Clara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the quiet pride of accomplishment. "Thank you," she said simply. "I only do what I have been trained to do and what I know is right." As she walked back to her quarters, her backpack resting lightly on her shoulders, Clara felt the glow of the blood seal against her back. It was no longer just a symbol, it was a promise that the human mind, when nurtured and applied wisely, could achieve incredible things. She thought of the academy, the students, and the legacy she carried. The whispers and mockery of the past were gone, replaced by curiosity, admiration, and quiet respect. That evening, Clara sat by the window, looking out at the twin suns setting over the academy grounds. She reflected on her journey, from the first day, when her worn backpack had drawn laughter, to now, when it carried a symbol of legacy and human ingenuity. She thought about the challenges ahead, the lessons she would continue to learn, and the subtle ways she could guide others. Clara knew one thing with certainty. Humans, underestimated for so long, had potential that could surprise the galaxy. Patience, intelligence, and careful observation could accomplish more than technology or speed alone. And as the blood seal glowed faintly on her backpack, she felt a quiet pride, not just in herself, but in humanity as a whole. The Academy had seen it. The students had learned it. And Clara James, carrying a legacy both ancient and enduring, had reminded them all why humans should never, ever be underestimated. She adjusted the straps of her backpack and stood, ready for whatever new challenges the universe might bring. And though she moved quietly, she carried with her a force far greater than appearances could suggest. The brilliance, ingenuity, and enduring spirit of humanity itself.